Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Míle Fáilte Rovan Shaw, and ócáid seo le cumann frisce na hÉireann chuir sé anna has orm fáilte chur ag an í seo. You're very, very welcome to this Irish Whisky Society President's Tasting, the last one of the season this year, 2023. And they call it the President's Tasting because the President gets to decide what the theme is going to be or what the liquid's going to be. So when I started in January and they said, you know, you're going to have to pick one for the President's Tasting, it took me that long to decide it's got to be Killowen. And I'm delighted that we're able to have this tasting tonight of some superb whiskey. This is not only whiskey, and we'll learn more about that and taste it later on. So please join me and welcome distiller and wizard from Killowen Distillery, Brendan Carthy.
Where's your wand, Brendan?
Keep it in the past. Well, Gramili Miogat. Sas and Dawn, a bit and Shaw liver, not a special to Shaw and Act. I guess go her more. And he is special that more or reactor on brain faster. So Gramili Miogat. Yeah. Those are some very kind words, Brian, so thank you very much. No, I'm absolutely delighted to be here because I used to attend tastings here whenever I got a chance, and it's always a bit of a trek, you know, and that's how much, you know, I think of the society, trying to get a bus or a train down after work. I don't know if you know, our part of the country, it's not very well connected, and there's a few good trains that run at very crappy times. So it always ended up me being absolutely smashed and trying to sprint across the train station, missing the train, running over to try and get on a bus, missing it as well, and then ringing a friend to see if I could stay down here for the night somewhere. So it was always the same story, but regardless, you always made sure you came back. So I think the last one I attended in this building was won by another distiller, Peter Mulryan, a brilliant distiller. So it was the Blackwater one. I'm sure a lot of you were at that as well. So it means a lot for me just to be standing at the other side of the room rather than sitting at the back of the room. Killowen's come a long way, and the team have come a long way, and I'm very, absolutely just overwhelmed and humbled just to be standing here. So this is without doubt, I'd say it's the best whiskey organisation in the country. So thank you very much for having me. But yeah, I suppose this first whiskey I'll start indulging, but this was just distilled last week. It was distilled in the nick of time to get it shipped out to the gang. We've had a distilling embargo this month because we're trying to bottle up all our different products and get stuff shipped out. You know, and we have a small team up there as well and limited space. So we're trying to get out the blackberry rum for the Killowen cult. We're trying to get a really impressive bottling done for Potching now, and then at the same time we're trying to bottle up whiskey orders that had just come into place. So this one was just put out in the nick of time, and I know I absolutely love it. It was actually Fionnán O'Connor who designed this mash bill as well. So this was designed as the next release for. I'm just going to take this off 1 second, so just bear with me. It's getting pretty rowdy out there. There's all sorts of rabbits.
Sorry, what strength is this?
I'm just coming back with this information. Okay, so we're going with was it number one?
Number one.
Yeah. Pardon me. Do you keep it on the inside or the outside? The outside. This is a amateur hour. Ever seen Anchorman? Oh dear. Right, I sent this to Brian earlier. So I do know the mash bills, so I just want to make sure that I've got them absolutely right. So Fionnán designed this one, and he just wanted to see what would happen to Killowen if we really increased the unmalted barley content. And that's because it's not something that we really toyed around with. When we talked about some of those lovely flavours that were coming out of other distilleries, almost a bit like, you know, like a yellow melon sort of flavours I noticed in some people's spur, particularly in Ecklinville. So we were wondering, is that coming from a higher unmalted barley content or not, or would we get much more pot still space? And so we've really upped it. So in the terms of a 14 bag, we tend to work in 14 bag mash bills. How much actual malt we can fit into our mash tun. Those are 14 25 kilogram bags. 6 of these bags are malted, and then 6 of them are raw barley, unmalted barley. Then we've got a bag of oats, which are malted as well, and a bag of rye. We've stopped using wheat over the last while. We're going to go for a while to see how we go. And I'm missing it. I used to think wheat did nothing, but wheat just tastes like bread, and bread's great. But it's definitely the least complex out of all the grains I find. Somebody asked about the ABV. Just be careful because it is 68%. So. You can add a tiny drop of water if you want. 6 bags, yep. Unmalted, yep. And then 1 bag of malted oats and 1 bag of rye. The malted oats were also, yes, malted and peated oats. Yeah. No, the rye is malted, yeah. Yeah. I didn't even do the maths in this, but I don't think the centre's the, for Jesus' sake. Dublin. Yeah. Sorry guys, there's nothing I can see, just crowds of people running about. We'll just continue on, yeah. Just reminds me of my childhood. Oh God. But yeah. So any more thoughts on that? Has anybody got a mouthful of anything? It is very viscous, but remember that it hasn't been diluted from the still. It tastes explosive. There's one thing that will come to mind about this, guys, and that's because of, the oiliness of the spirit. There's although there's only a small amount of oats in there, the unmalted barley as well, it's particularly oily, and a lot of that alcohol burn starts to take a back seat. But you're definitely getting pot still, you were talking about earlier, pot still spice is really coming through there. And I thought I would get a lot more of that, yellow melon sort of note, but that was the idea of the experiment as well, but it didn't come to the fore at all. So we just get a lot more pot still spice and graininess and nuttiness coming through than we thought. When this first came off still, it tastes slightly different now that it's been allowed to breathe in the glass, but I've tasted it twice, and I was talking to Brian about this, and it was just pure hobnobs before. Chocolate hobnob sort of flavours coming through. It's not very romantic, but it's real life at the end of the day. And but those fruits that we expected to get have definitely taken a back seat. And I don't think we'll ever get those. I don't think that we ever want to. But it's always good to try, But here, don't be afraid. If anybody's got any questions on it, work away. Just going to check, make sure everybody's safe, are we? Yeah, I can't see any fire, just hearing explosions. That's about it. Do you mind if I just send a text message? Because one of my colleagues is going to be walking this way and I just want to tell him not to. Okay. Thank you.
I'll just take the mic and take a few questions while.
Thank you. I just wanted to cues.
No, of course. No. So, for those of you online, there is just, let's say, a little spot of trouble in O'Connell Street, and there's a lot of people in the street, a lot of people milling around. So that's why we started late. And that's why we are sort of taking some precautions. But anyway, while we're waiting on Brendan, he just needs to send a text. On this mash bill, on the flavours that you're getting, one at a time. This is going to go into an ex-bourbon cask and let it simmer there for a while. And if it needs to be finished after that, we'll finish it in something else. But for the moment, it's going to go into ex-bourbon cask. And Brendan wasn't kidding when he said he just about got it ready for, because he'd been away. And then he got back, and within a couple of days of getting back, he did the whole thing, put it together, and sent it down to us just in time so that we could bottle it in the minis and send it out to you guys online and have it then ready for us here.
Lovely.
Going to jump back in?
Absolutely.
All righty. Do indeed.
Thank you very much. So we were over in Italy. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Milan, but when going to whiskey clubs in Milan, the guys know their whiskey. In fact, the level of geekery and detail that they get into is phenomenal. And the quality of Irish whiskey as well that they have out there is brilliant. They tend not to get any of the crappy stuff. They only get the good stuff, which is difficult because most companies, when they sell into and then maybe one layer or a little bit of the really high-end stuff, but they tend to just focus on the really good stuff. And every single whiskey tasting that I done and I attended, the guys just drank their whiskey and they left. And I said, when you go to an Irish whiskey tasting, people go for pints before. They stop halfway through, they have a few pints, and they have a few pints afterwards. And they cleanse their palate with a pint between drops. And they thought this was insane. But there was only one, it was like a room like this, and there was only one beer sold the whole night, and that was me. This beer. And I really wanted another one, but I was just so embarrassed I just couldn't. But, sorry? You're asking, are the Italians, are they bottling their own whiskey? You're right. So Irish, what happens in Italy, what was the question that was just asked there was, are the Italians bottling their own whiskey or are they bottling Scotch? What we found is that they import proper brands of whiskey, high-end brands of whiskey and sell it. But in terms of independent bottlers, we're aware of one independent bottler. They're great. They're like, they're called Matthew Whiskey. And they're an independent bottler of Irish whiskey. And they just don't mention anything about the brand that it came from. They mention it's the opposite of transparency. And that's because they're basically saying it's all about the conversation. Because people can be prejudiced by brand and things like that. So it's another way to look at transparency if it's a complete reversal of the idea. So they're like upstarts in the industry. They're good fun. They're young guys. And they really know what they're talking about. But that's the only independent bottler I know of. They do. They want a cask of ours that's a Geneva, believe it or not. But they're buying casks of whiskey from Two Stacks as well, yeah. Good guys, they're good fun.
Someone said hot Weetabix.
Hot Weetabix, class. Have some. I love Weetabix. Great.
And I agree with you, by the way, about the palate cleansing of whiskey. Can I ask, is the slight, it's almost like peated stuff, is that coming from the way you fire your stills?
Right, no, there's peated on this as well. The oats are peated, and the malted barley is peated as well. Sorry, I didn't mention that before, but the malted barley is peated, and the oats are peated. It's actually quite peaty.
But is there a difference, do you find, in a new make if you're saying not using peated?
Oh yeah.
I
I think so. The question you're asking is there a difference between flame-fed spirit and non-flame-fed spirit, and does that add cooked sort of a flavour note to the spirit? And the answer is absolutely. The difference in the complexity of flavour is it's as clear as day. It's just the same as having peated or non-peated. So if you look at, say, our copper labelled potching that we released at the very start, it is a cooked note going through there. We call it the Maillard reaction, but to an extent it's a little bit. There's a wee fly here, sorry. There's this cook note that's always coming through that doesn't exist in other stills. I love to tell the story about, a famous Speyside distillery, and they had just before we started, when I was planning our distillery, which took about 3 years as well, they had a still implosion, which was the talk of Scotland. And it was outrageous. One of the distilling staff turned on the condenser too late, and the thing was very, very hot, and it was flame fed. Gas flame fed, And as a result, when you see that hot can in water experiment they do in American movies there, we don't tend to do it in school here anyway. And then the can implodes, so the hot going to cold too fast. And they're still imploded and had to get a replacement still. So they moved with the times when they got the replacement still and they got an electric still in, or a steam coil still in, sorry. And a few years later, the spirit wasn't tasting as good as it was before, and they lost a bit of their DNA, lost that cook note. So after a while then, Glenfarclas turned around and they ripped out the steam kit and stuck the flames back in underneath it and got the lovely cook note back. So that's an example of it being reintroduced. But so.
What are the yeast? Are you just in the wild yeast or distillers yeast or both?
That's probably why it took so long. This was 2-week fermentation time. Yeah, this was.
So it's just wild yeast?
Oh no, we always add domestic yeast as well. You can never get a full fermentation. I'll talk about that more in a second, but you can never actually get a full fermentation. So in terms of the question here is about what yeast type does Killowen use, and we use in 2 ways. So we do these open top fermentations, and we allow it to get really super funky, and the wildlife and the bacteria and the yeast to get in there and infect our wash. And then once it's fermenting, we then pitch our own yeast. And sometimes there might be residual yeast as well inside the fermenters, because you're never going to, unless you're using caustic soda, which we will never use. You're not going to get rid of that. So yeast is a germ, like it just exists everywhere. So the fermentations are very slow, very funky, which just allows for flavour. Allows, if you've ever tasted some wild yeast beers, that just really pulls your cheeks, and you get a load of pineapple notes and things like that. So that's very important for us, and that fruitiness ends up being in the spirit. What we have done, we have never distilled without wild flame, but we've done distillations where we've used a wort cooler and cooled the wort down, to fermentable temperature, 20, 30 odd degrees, pitched our yeast immediately, and then allowed the fermentation to take hold. We've done that a bit at the start, which is the traditional way, the main way of doing it. Not only are you wasting water in doing that and time, what we've noticed is that you get less flavour in the wash. Drinking wash is important for us, tasting the wash is important for us. But we do go to the other extreme. So every time we mash, we produce an extra 100 litres of wort, and we put it into a fermenter. And this is a Solera system of just wild yeast and wild bacteria. And it just sits there the whole time, and it's constantly fermenting. And it's 100% wild fermented. And we put it through a hybrid column still and collect the spirit off it. And the spirit we get off it is wonderful. It's we double distill with it. First of all with no plates, second time with plates, and you get this lovely pear forward, pear heavy fruity note on it, and it's we're drinking a bit of it today. It's actually really nice, very pleasant stuff. It tastes like perry, it's very peculiar. So these are the things that you can do whenever you go to the extreme end of the spectrum with wildness. But I would never drink that wort. Probably kill me. So it's basically a dunder pit. Yeah.
The washbacks are open to the elements.
Yeah.
Say 2-week fermentation.
2 weeks, sometimes a month. Yeah. Sometimes a month. But we do rum. I know Jack's in different opinion about this, but the rum can go up to a month. But yeah. But yeah, we're going to jump on to the next one. Okay. The Dagda's oats. Is anybody here potching now? Right.
Someone commented, it took you less than 15 minutes to say funky.
Funky. We're not even talking about rum. But, right. Potching now was about, potching now is great. First of all, potching is where it is today because of a lot of people putting their money where their mouth is and putting their, just actually rolling their sleeves up and getting stuck in. But there's nobody more important than Fran Levy for setting up Potching now and for really bringing Potching that extra leap and bound. Potching sales have plummeted, which is a good thing because there's a lot of dodgy crap Potching being sold there for the last decade. But now the grassroots, amongst proper spirit enthusiasts and people who actually know what they're talking about and actually give a shout about spirits, Potching's exploded. But that doesn't come out in the numbers that the IWA have produced, for instance. But we all know as spirit drinkers that Potching, people are talking about it. You wouldn't have been able to fill out a festival like we had recently unless it was. We wouldn't be able to sell bottles of Potching, neither would all the other proper producers, unless it was. So we're at this lovely handover period between hedgerow distillation and legal distillation, which is inevitable. But we're at this lovely crux point where people actually give a crap and can take it on, because realistically, it's going to die out because it's too expensive to produce compared with buying cheap hooch and an off license. So we have a responsibility to fix that. This one is a heavy oaken mash bill as well. So again, working off, this is 64%, so don't worry, it's a wee bit weaker this time. So you see a running theme here. So guys, again, working off that 14 bags, 7 bags are peated malted oats. So these oats were grown locally down the lane, bought off a local charity. We don't want to talk too much about the charity because we're going to do a fundraiser for that charity early next year. And then 5 bags of malted barley, 1 bag of rye, and 1 bag of unmalted barley. So those oats, peated and malted, give you this lovely custardy note that comes through in the spirit. And I don't know if we've got time to talk about the dagda. Does anybody know what the dagda is? Yes. Allfather, basically, is about here. We're all very familiar with Norse mythology here, but unfortunately we don't know enough about our own sometimes, and neither do I. But this guy was great. Not only did he run around with a club that he could flatten any mountain with by hitting it, or he could kill anybody or bring somebody back to life if he so wished with the club. The more important weapon, his third job was being the god of war. His main job was being the god of fertility. And whenever...
So he made both love and war.
Yes, first love, and then generosity and feeding people, and lastly war, which is a good way to be. Teach these gobshites the same out there. And, so what he done was he used to carry around a big, massive black pot with him everywhere, and it never emptied. It was always full of oats, and he just used to feed everybody with it. So it's a wonderful concept, and it fed into fertility of people, and it fed into fertility of the landscape, and that whole idea. And there was some really raunchy stories written about him back in the day, and Lady Gregory sort of refused to translate them into her, Giants and Fighting Men book. Misses out in that chapter, but I don't want to get into the details, but we will at some stage. We're going to do a bottle of whiskey dedicated to him, and you can read it there for yourselves in somebody else's writing. Yeah. 7 bags of peated oats, 5 bags of malted barley, and non-peated, just malted barley. 1 bag of rye and 1 bag of unmalted barley. So the adjuncts are rye and unmalted barley, and then the rest of it, is 7 bags of oats, which are peated and malted, and 5 bags of malted barley. Now, the idea of this was the dagda, the connection between him and oats. And always focusing on the oats being a massive part of culinary history of Ireland and Scotland. I suppose the potato took away from that in a massive way, but the oats always existed alongside the potato. And oats were a massive part of our distillation history, and that's something that we need to look at here as well. So, good to hear the police are outside now.
It's not coming through on the screen, so you just sound like a madman every time you say it.
They're here for us.
They just see you pointing at the window and they go, the man walks outside.
Yeah. Oh, another bang.
You just look paranoid.
You're sitting going, do we have to go and stop this? Man the barricade. No, it just makes it more exciting, Do you remember that time we were inside there? Everybody's sitting at home going, I wish I was there.
We're locked
Yeah.
to do between.
That's it. So do you remember the Orange Men marched down here many years ago? Mick Maguire got locked in a pub during it, and it was the best lock in his life, 3 o'clock in the day. He had nothing to do when he sit there and drink. But yeah, so again, guys, this is just showing what poaching can do. It's a little tribute as well to our mythology, because I think poaching is that ingrained in society, and it sort of belongs to the past. And then there's a much more ancient past behind that. And I think all in all, the whole thing belongs to a collective Irish identity that's continuing. And we can define that as we go along. But yeah, any thoughts on the flavours? Works. I definitely took advantage of this. Poaching now, I wasn't driving, and I drank far too much of it. It's crazy how much of this you can drink. Yeah, because of the oil. the oats are the oiliest grain. And the more oats you use, the less alcohol burn you have, the more viscosity and chewing there is in your palate. So,
See the same lovely nice finish on it, quite oaty, but also still fruity and sweet.
yeah, there's a fruitiness coming through there, yeah. But it's bloody oaty. Compared to the last one, you can really get the unmalted barley coming through. You know, I know it's 4% more.
Yeah, this one's a bit fresher, this one's a bit heavier.
You man just said here, the number 1 was a bit fresher, number 2 was a bit heavier. I think you're right. Number 2 is more liking for my palate, but number 1 is better because it's going to go into a cask. Did we say that number 1 was, yeah, it was the Irish Whiskey Society's mash bill, so it's only been done for 1 cask for you guys, so it's
Given that the first one was 68%,
yeah.
the alcohol born on the second is more.
Oh, really? There you go. For me, I find it less, but I know everybody's different. So the query, the alcohol burn, Mom was just saying there, is a little bit more in the second one. For me, it coats the mouth more. There's, you know, it hangs around for longer.
There's a great mouthfeel on the Dagda oats.
Mouthfeel, isn't it funny? And there's 4% less ABV in the second one. Therefore, there's actually technically it's more watery. There's more water added to it because there's no water added to the first one. It's pure spirit, but there's a tiny bit added to the second one. First one's 68, second one's 64. Yet and all, the second one comes across more viscous because of the main ingredient being oats. If anybody, I know a lot of you here are already experts in whiskey, so I just want to explain how I see adjuncts and how I see oats. So oats are wonderful because it's like cooking with oil or cooking without oil. Everybody here loves fast foods and fatty foods because they bloody taste good. So it holds on to flavour for longer in your palate, and humans have evolved to enjoy flavour. So whenever you add more oil onto your food, it tastes better. So as an adjunct, if you add the oiliest grain into your whiskey, and if you increase that as much as possible, it's going to taste better, providing there's enough other things there to give a bit of spice. So that's why we purposely put in that little bit of unmalted barley for pot still spice, and a little bit of rye for pot still spice. But that massive oily compound just makes it stick in your palate for much, much longer. And the other thing about malted oats is that they give you a custardy note as opposed to just a creamy note. When you malt a note, it turns from creaminess to custard creaminess. Literally a custard cream biscuit for me. This is all my nonsense, but it's something that I've learned through drinking heaps of New Make at work. So,
Have you adapted from using an oar?
Yeah, we're still using the oar. We've only got 1 oar left. We only need 1, but when it breaks, we'll get a new one. It's starting to chip away, but fucking sentimental value for it. They don't break as much as they used to because we used to have a big hallion of a distiller. He's a best friend of mine, Pierce Carr, so I don't mind calling him that. But he left us and set up a pub in Warren Point now, so it's Molly's. It's a great bar to go to if you ever get a chance. But yeah. But no worries. Good man. Do add water, definitely, yeah.
The viscosity doesn't change.
It
It's still got an amazing mouthfeel.
splits and then it probably even increases it slightly for a while.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
Yeah, adding a bit of water is a great idea. Sorry? First, Vulcan. Vulcan was the best spirit we made in the distillery. And this one I think is just slightly better. I didn't think we could ever beat it. But I think there was like a blueberry note in Vulcan that took a back seat, but for some reason, this one's just much more viscous and spicy. Jesus Christ. This is metal. Need to bring in the army. Just for the benefit of the camera, the riots are outside and they need to bring in the army.
You'd swear they were the ones doing the
Do you want me to, Matt? I think I'm starting out of the cameras area. So.
We're just going to pause for a moment,
Yeah.
and if you just cut the stream there.
Full of coins.
Sorry,